Thank you for staying with us. With the Iowa caucuses 1 week away, some good news for Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio, who were endorsed by the state's Des Moines Register. Clinton is running neck and neck with Bernie Sanders in Iowa, her once huge lead a thing of the past. For his part, Rubio remains well back frontrunner Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. And speaking of Trump, the Republican frontrunner is again making headlines for controversial statements.
My people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible. I've turned down millions and millions of dollars. I feel foolish actually doing it. You want to know the truth? I said, no, I don't want your $5 million. No, don't give me $2 million. I go back to, it's just not my way of life. I always was like, hey, I have to say this. I was very greedy. Now I'm going to be greedy for the country. We have to take in money. Greedy for the country.
And joining me now in studio are Mark Zal, co-chair of Republicans Abroad in Israel. Good evening.
Good evening, Ayman.
And from Democrats Abroad in Israel, Hillel Shenker. Good evening.
Good evening as well.
Well, both Clinton and Rubio are still polling behind other candidates in several states. How good a news is this for Hillary Clinton that the Des Moines Register endorsed her?
You're asking me? I think you should ask a Democrat.
Mr. Shenker.
Yes. Well, obviously, I'm sure that Hillary Clinton is quite happy to get the endorsement. What we are seeing is a very interesting race between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and whoever will come out on top will obviously be the next president of the United States.
How can we explain that Sanders closed the huge gap with Clinton, because it used to be a very, very significant gap?
Sanders is essentially what we know in Israel as the mass social protest movement. העם רוצה דורש צדק חברתי. The people want social justice. And I think he's raising a lot of very important issues. At the same time, Hillary Clinton has a tremendous amount of experience, and whoever will be the candidate will be the better candidate in the race.
And Mr. Zal, we saw Trump just a minute ago saying he could shoot someone and still not lose voters. Seems like he may be right.
Well, I think what you need to do, I think Hillel's wrong, as usual, about his analysis. What's going on in both parties, in fact, not only in the United States but around the world, is a general dissatisfaction with the political establishment. In the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders represents the outsider. I mean, he's clearly a strange candidate, but he is the recipient of the protest, not a social movement or of any sort of revolution, but a rejection of the Democratic establishment, and particularly Hillary Clinton and the Clinton hegemony that has in the Democratic Party. In the same token, we have this in the Republican Party. We have a rejection by the Republican base of the Republican establishment. And a dissatisfaction. I just came back from Charleston, South Carolina, where I attended the last presidential debate and the Republican National Committee meetings there. And I had a chance just to just walk around the city and just ask different people how they felt about these candidates, these issues. And it was quite eye-opening to listen to people from all walks of life just simply say they're tired of the typical politically correct and mealy-mouthed talk of the politicians who just seem to argue amongst themselves and not get anything done. They want to have a change. And that's what Donald Trump represents in the Republican primaries.
You believe this will also translate to votes?
I don't know. That's a really interesting thing, what we're going to see in the next week in Iowa and the caucuses, which are a very strange form of primary, and later on a more conventional primary in New Hampshire, both on the Democratic and the Republican side. I think Marco Rubio's having received the Des Moines Register's endorsement today is an important one for him. He needs to basically finish a solid third at least in Iowa, and it looks like, according to the polls, he will do that. He may even do better. But more interesting is what will happen in New Hampshire, where he's basically tied in second place with John Kasich of Ohio and with Ted Cruz, and that could be interesting. Anyway, whatever what happens here, we've got a really interesting race, and there's Michael Bloomberg. I guess you want to ask about him.
Absolutely.
I actually wanted to make a comment here.
Yes.
That Ted Cruz, another one of the great Republican candidates for president, attacked Trump for representing New York values. Well, what we may see in theory, is 3 New York candidates. Because Bernie Sanders, like myself, is a Brooklyn Jewish boy. Trump is a New Yorker. Michael Bloomberg was the mayor of New York, and Hillary Clinton was the senator from New York. So however you look at it, the world, the United States may be looking at New York values being competed between the two sides.
Ayman, because if that's the case, we're going to have, well, first of all, New York isn't the United States, despite that famous picture of the world, seen from the New York perspective, that everything circles around New York. It just isn't that way. There are about 300 million people outside of New York who also count, Hillel. And these people are going to determine the presidency of the United States. And I wouldn't be so smug about the chances of the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate. Everything, all bets are open on this election. And what happens at our convention in Cleveland in July could be historic, and just in terms of the kind of debates we're going to be having there. We in Charleston just last week began to review the rules to make sure that if we have a convention fight, which we haven't had in almost 60 years, it'll be done fairly and openly.
I agree, of course, that New York is not the United States, just as Tel Aviv is not Israel. However, the fact is that it is most likely that demographics are going to determine the outcome of the election, and the demographics are going against the Republicans.
Well,
the Republicans represent primarily the white Anglo-Saxon
This is a
Protestants
litany we heard after 2012,
who are
Hillel.
a dwindling
Hillel,
minority.
This is what you all said after 2012,
and that's what we saw in 2012.
Is writing the death certificate of the Republican Party, but then came 2014, and you lost the Senate, and you lost 31 state houses,
the
and
people were not motivated
Hillel,
to go out and vote.
I wouldn't
they
be
will vote
no, come on.
for the president.
I don't think you should be relying so much on demographics. Yes, there is a demographic issue, but it's not the only issue.
I'm also relying on the better candidates.
You have to
very
give.
Simply.
You have to give the credit to the American people. They're going to choose in the ultimately for who the president is going to be, and they're going to choose between the candidates the parties select.
That's right.
If the Democrats select Bernie Sanders, we know where that's going to go. If Michael Bloomberg enters the race as an independent, then the Democrats have something to worry about. If we, on the Republican side, have a third-party candidate, let's say Donald Trump becomes dissatisfied with the result, that would be a very bad scenario for us. It's wide open, Hillel. Don't be so smug.
It's fascinating.
It's wide open.
I'm not being smug. I'm being analytical.
Trust
and I'm
the American
looking
people.
At the reality.
Trust the people.
I am trusting them.
Good.
Do you trust them to vote for Michael Bloomberg? How good are his chances if he decides to run?
Well, first of all, he's an impressive figure. I mean, he's been both a Republican and if he comes in, he's not an independent. He's really more of a Democrat than either of those. And he's built a very successful business career. He ran, in my view, New York expertly, in contrast to the current mayor, a Democrat. I think he would be a fascinating candidate. I think Hillary Clinton's in trouble. I think she's in trouble because of the criminal charges that may be brought against her. Her health is an issue. There are issues about her ethics. And whatever we may say, the polls clearly show that the public doesn't trust her. They do trust Bernie Sanders, interestingly. And that's why he's doing so well vis-a-vis her. So the reason why people like Bloomberg are talking about getting into the race at this very late date is because they see that she could be failing like she did in 2008.
Well, here we are sitting in Israel, and we should note that two of the major candidates we're talking about, Sanders and Bloomberg, are both Jewish, which I think is very interesting. I would also like to note that every time there has been a third party, we have never had a.
Wait a minute. What does that mean? I'm asking. Excuse me if I ask you.
I'm making an observation. That's all, which I think is very interesting for us in Israel.
This was a very interesting debate. I'm so sorry I have to cut it short, but that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Okay. Yeah.